can always tell a professional tradesman by how they set up at the job site. Behind me, Nicky's got his own little battle station set up. He's strapping into the stilts. They're gonna be texturing this front unit. We're super excited to show you how they do it. If you wonder why these two work so well together, it's because they're father and son.
Good. Yep.
Drywall finishing is in their blood. Mike is up top right now working on a very special old world finish. He's using a stiff bladed plastic 18-inch knife, making it look easy with this random pattern. Nick in the downstairs bedroom doing the lid. Texture's on, now he's knocking it down. Mike up in the loft. Texture's going on nice. It's all about having the right tools for the job. Always working on the lid first, that way if there's any drips down on the wall, they're not having to pull drips off of wet texture. When people ask me how you build so affordably, they forget that I'm always working. So it's 8:30 on a Sunday night. I'm out here, I'm hanging exterior light fixtures. It's just one little piece of pickup that doesn't seem very big. It doesn't seem like it's much of a task, but all those little things add up. So if I can show up close to dark when nobody's here and do all those little tasks, it'll help us stay on schedule. I'm telling you, it's all the little things like that that will nickel and dime your time and your pocketbook when it comes to building infill housing. So we're gonna be splicing back this 14 gauge wire. We're gonna hang these exterior galvanized light fixtures. They're about $45, linked below in my shopping list. I use the same thing over and over on every ADU so we don't get decision fatigue. We'll either go with a galvanized barn style look or a black. So we'll change the finish depending on the interior design package, but that's how we keep it simple. So up on my ladder here, I'm just using a pair of wire strippers. They're marked for the gauge wire, so I go to 14. I like to go about a ½ inch back, squeeze it and strip it off. We want to make sure that we don't nick the copper. Don't over squeeze these because any little nick in the copper over time could give way. So there's our black, our white, and our ground, and we're going to be hooking that up to the ends of our light fixture. Of course, we want to make sure that this circuit is turned off. You always want to test it before to make sure. Another thing I like about these light fixtures is that they have copper wire. Some cheaper fixtures will have aluminum. I always go in the same order. I always go black, white, ground. It's kind of a personal preference thing. I'm not a professional licensed electrician. These are just tasks I've done for many, many years, so I feel really comfortable doing them. Normally, I would put a bulb in and test this light before we actually mount it onto the wall, but due to the fact that we don't have any power yet, we still don't have our main line tied into our mast, that's not going to do us any good. The mini split systems. So we put a 24,000 BTU single-headed mini split in the front unit. That's 810 square feet. And we put a 12,000 BTU Daikin mini split in the back unit. The exact models I use are on my shopping list. That's also linked within the show notes below. I did get good news from the power company. I got the easement done and they're not charging me anything for the overhead vertical drop. That's one thing to think about. Underground power is better if you can get it, but you have to not only pay for the wire, you also have to pay for the conduit and the labor to dig the ditch. So a free overhead power drop was a small win this week and we'll take it. Just a really quick detail when you're working on your gutters. If you can, leave the bottoms of your downspouts disconnected. This still has to be finish graded. We're probably gonna pave it. So if we were to cut our turnouts on the bottom of our downspouts to this rough grade, the gutter guys are gonna have to come back and trim it. So we always say, hey, run the downspout, but leave the last foot off until we have our finish grade and our pavement or our concrete driveway done, so we don't have to work backwards. Other small tasks that I'm working on while it's late on the weekend and there's nothing else to do is marking out our landscaping, where our irrigation lines are gonna go. We're gonna plant a couple of trees. Every jurisdiction has different requirements for new development. Being that this is a new lot here, we're gonna have to plant 2 trees that are 2 inches and I think 15 5-gallon shrubs. So doing some of that pickup work when there's nothing else to do while we're waiting on drywall to dry inside, we're waiting on texture. Try to do all those little things outside. Quick tip on how to install your guy wires. So we have a vertical mass here and we have 2 wires that are gonna be perpendicular to where we're pulling. So the first thing I do is I set these up
on a 35-degree angle. I don't want to over tension them, and I'm going to try to get my tab underneath a roof shingle. I wouldn't want to put it right on the edge where we're going to crush it, so I want to be just underneath so water is going to drain off. I'm going to pre-drill the hole here, and then so we don't have any leaks over time, I'm going to clean out the hole. I'm going to fill it up with asphalt mastic, and then we're going to put the bolts in and smooth this bad boy out. This is a 3/8 lag. Again, I want to make sure that we bed it in this asphalt, and just like that, we're done.
Up and back inside to start texture. Just a quick recap on what we did. We came in, we taped this unit. That was the first step. After the tape was on, we did what's called the first coat. The first coat is skimming mud across all the factory edges, filling all the holes. That was sanded down and then followed up with a second coat. Now that the second coat's on, it too has been sanded. So there's a perfect, flat, smooth surface that's ready to accept a hand texture. We're going with what's called an old world finish. I like a really smooth wall. It's actually a lot of texture. It's just thick, but not a lot of rough spots. So one step under smooth wall shows a little bit of deflection in it, and I like the look. It's something that's popular right now, but there is a personal preference in texture. Some people like a skip trowel, some people like an orange peel. I know some builders that only will do a smooth wall. Things to consider if you want a smooth wall finish, a lot of times you have to use 5/8 drywall so you don't see any deflection in the walls. And also it costs a lot more money to do a smooth wall or a level 5. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to build on a budget, the cheapest options are either a sprayed on orange peel or a simple hand trowel finish. We pay a little extra for this old world semi-smooth wall, but it looks great and our units will stand out. Now that we have the old world finish on, the next step is to knock it down. So Nikki's got a nice sanding pole here. He's got 120 on it, and he's gonna take the little bit of trowel marks, maybe some raised lines and some heavy spots, we'll call them boogers, off the wall so the paint will go on nice. It'll be a nice smooth finish. Knocking down any high spots with the sanding pole. That sanding pole is how we get everything perfectly smooth. It's gonna take paint and give us a beautiful finish. So the texture is all complete in both units. You can see it's still a little bit yellow. It's gonna take about a day for this to dry. When it's dry, we'll come back in and sand it. After it's sanded, it's ready to be primed and 2 coats of paint will go on. Here's a good look at what the texture looks like when it's on the wall and still drying. It's kind of got this splotchy yellow look. When it's completely dry, it'll be white. This is an old world finish. We've got subs on top of each other. They were just finishing up the texture while we got our hardwood flooring delivered. We like to have our hardwood floor on site, ideally in a dry climate when all the wet work is done. In a perfect world, we would not be acclimating hardwood floor with wet mud on the walls. We're looking for approximately 8% moisture in the subfloor and the moisture in the wood to be within 2% of that. Being that it's the summertime, we've got good ventilation, we have all the windows open. I'm not super worried about this wood acclimating in the next 7 days before we install it. Here in the front unit, we have wood acclimating as well. All the texture in these rooms are completely dry. Jason's going around with a soft sanding block and hitting all the metal corners. We like to knock the texture off of the corners so if anything bumps into them, the texture and paint doesn't chip off. The trim package just showed up. I'm gonna be doing finish work all day today. I'm gonna try to show you guys a few things that I'm doing when it comes to windowsills, hanging doors. I've got the closet packs in. It's early in the morning today, so I'm super fired up. I was reviewing some of the video last night, and you can always tell the time of day by how tired I am. Working dark to dark the last couple of weeks here, pretty much everything is up to me. Most of the subs are done. Now it's all about finish work and paint and floors and cabinets and countertops. So I'm looking forward to sharing all that with you guys. Thanks for being patient with me. I'm trying to get all this work done while capturing video on this $5 tripod that I got at a yard sale. So it's easier said than done to record the content and do the work, but I'm gonna give it my best shot. buddy Wayne showed up from Ashland Lumber yesterday and dropped off these doors. It was no more money to go with this old-fashioned 5-panel. I've been using a 3-panel shaker style, and I went with this rail and style 5-panel door for something a little bit different. This place is in the historic district, so I thought, let's give it a little bit of old flair. Here's our basic window sill detail. It's a 1x8 finger jointed pre-prime pine with a 1x3 pine apron underneath it. Super clean look. We have 3-way drywall wraps to save money. That'll paint up really nicely. Our closet pack. This is simple particle board shelving with a bullnose on it, and we keep it really clean. This will all get caulked in and painted and covered up with closet doors. Here's the basics of hanging an interior door. So the first thing I do on my hinge side is I check the sub jamb and I see how plumb it is. That way I know where to start. I also look at my cross sight. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tack the door into place. I'm gonna put a nail in each corner of each side, and then I can start to adjust it. Now that I have the door just set in place on blocks, it's important to remember whatever our finished floor is, that's where we wanna raise our door jamb to. So I have a couple pieces of 3/4 inch oak underneath the jambs. I've got it set in place. I'm simply gonna tack each corner of the door, and everything works off of the hinge side. So I'm gonna check this really quickly. We're plumb this way. We're perfectly plumb this way. Now I'm gonna shim the hinge side of the jamb, and after that's done, I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna plumb the closed side of the jamb, and I'm also gonna make sure that we have a perfect 1/8 inch reveal all the way down, and also that our striker lines up with the catch on the door so we don't have any issues with the door not latching. That looks really good. I'm also gonna check the cross sight here. So I'm looking at how parallel the door is to the jamb stop. So it's not a 1/4 inch out at the top per se and tight at the bottom. After I have the door exactly how I like it, I'm gonna go through, I like to use these pre-cut pine shims, and I'll go through and do all of my shimming of the door to make sure that it doesn't move. We'll trim those off and we'll case it. So there's 100 different ways to hang a door. Before I was an infill housing developer, I was an interior finish contractor. So I've hung thousands of doors. Some are easier than others. This is how I do it. It doesn't mean it's the only way, but I like to shim at the hinges after the door is tacked in place. I'm gonna check my cross sight, which I've already done. It's perfectly parallel top to bottom. I like to shim at the top. I also always like to put a shim behind the striker mortise. That way I can countersink a screw. I also put grabber screws into the farthest back hole to lock the door in place, so over time gravity isn't gonna let it sag. When it comes to a nailing pattern, I like to put pin nails every 16 inches or so. I use a 16 gauge brad nailer. This is a straight brad, 2 inches long is what I like. I'm using my trusty speed square here to get the reveal that I want. So 1/4 inch reveal here, and we want a 1/4 inch reveal across the top. And by setting a speed square up there, you can see exactly where your top bead is gonna be. Again, approximately every 16 inches. I'm trying to get one nail into the jamb and then one nail into the trimmer stud. We can do this really quickly. Then after all the case legs are on, we'll come back through and we'll do the parting bead and the header. For this simple craftsman detail, we're using a pine finger jointed 1x3 leg, and then I use this piece of 3/8 by 1.5 inch brick mold stop, they call it. It may be called something different in your area, or a screen mold. We're using it as the parting bead. And this parting bead is going to span 1 inch over each side. Just a quick tip, the creases on your finger are approximately 1 inch. So I use that 1 inch indicator to hold it over. I like to tack these in to the case leg. And then our header is a 1x5 piece of pre-primed pine, and we cut those equal to the outside of the case leg. And that way we get a nice, clean craftsman look. It's affordable, it's easy to do, it doesn't take a ton of material. Put a couple pins in each side, And then I always shoot one shot up into the header here. And that's how we trim our doors. Here's a quick glance at the simple closet pack that we use in these rentals. It's 40 and 80 on one side, so you have 2 shelf and poles, and then the right side is 66 inches tall. That pole will be for dresses. Simple detail of the door. So with that, we'll wrap up this week's video. We did hand texture, we put that nice old world finish on. We're just getting ready to spray this place out. The finish work is done. We did windowsills, closet packs, doors, trim. The HVAC bill showed up. It was $6,700. That included the outdoor unit, the inside heads for both the front and the back ADU and install. The wood floor just got delivered a couple days ago. I paid $3.40 a square foot for 3 1/4 #1 common red oak. The drywall bill also just showed up. It was about $8,000 and that's all material, labor, sanded, finished, done, ready for paint. Thanks so much for sticking around and we can't wait to see you next week on the next How to Build an ADU video.